The signal shouldn't have existed. Dr. Elena Martinez stared at her computer screen, running the analysis for the fourth time. The pattern remained unchanged, a perfectly structured sequence of radio waves that defied natural explanation. After 15 years of searching the cosmos for signs of intelligent life, she had grown accustomed to disappointment. But this was different. Dr. Martinez? Her assistant, James Wong, knocked on the door frame of her cramped office at the SETI Institute. The director wants to know if you're coming to the budget meeting. Elena waved him over without taking her eyes off the screen. James, look at this sequence. Tell me I'm not going crazy. James leaned over her shoulder, his eyes widening as he processed the data. Is that what I think it is? If you think it's an artificially generated signal showing clear signs of mathematical complexity and recurring patterns that couldn't possibly occur naturally, then yes. Elena finally looked up at him, her dark eyes bright with excitement. And it's coming from just beyond Jupiter's orbit. James straightened up so quickly he nearly knocked over her coffee mug. But that's impossible. We would have detected any object that close years ago. Unless they didn't want to be detected until now. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. The budget meeting was forgotten as they spent the next 3 hours analyzing the signal from every possible angle. By midnight, Elena had convinced herself of 3 things: the signal was artificial, it was intended for Earth, and it was getting stronger. What she couldn't have predicted was how quickly everything would change. The first visual contact came 2 days later. The object, sleek, crystalline, and roughly the size of a small aircraft carrier, appeared in high orbit with no warning. Every telescope on Earth turned toward it, and every military went on high alert. But before panic could fully set in, they transmitted their first message. We are the Verlaxians. We come in peace and seek dialogue with Earth's scientific community. The message was transmitted in perfect English, Mandarin, Russian, and several other major Earth languages. The linguistics team nearly went into collective cardiac arrest trying to figure out how they had learned Earth languages so quickly. Elena had a different theory: they had been watching for far longer than anyone suspected. Within 48 hours, Elena found herself in a secured facility in Nevada, part of a hastily assembled team of Earth's top xenobiologists, physicists, and diplomatic experts. She wasn't sure if she was more excited about first contact or terrified of the responsibility that came with it. Dr. Martinez. General Laura Chen, the military liaison to the scientific team, approached her as she was setting up her equipment. You'll be our primary contact with their scientific officer. Are you prepared? Elena nodded, though her stomach was doing somersaults. As prepared as anyone can be to meet an alien species, General. Good. Because they're landing in 20 minutes. The Verlaxian shuttle descended like a falling star, touching down with impossible grace on the desert floor. Elena stood with the rest of the welcome committee, her heart pounding as the ship's exterior shifted and reformed, creating an opening that hadn't been visible moments before. The first Verlaxian to emerge took Elena's breath away. Tall and ethereally graceful, with silver-white skin that seemed to shimmer in the sunlight, Ambassador Kyrine moved with a fluid grace that made human movement seem clumsy by comparison. Their large, almond-shaped eyes were a deep violet, and what appeared to be hair was actually a crown of delicate, crystalline filaments that caught the light like fiber optics. Greetings, representatives of Earth. Kyrine's voice was melodious, with an otherworldly harmonic quality that made Elena's skin tingle. We bring knowledge and friendship from the stars. Elena stepped forward as protocol dictated, extending her hand. Welcome to Earth, Ambassador. I'm Dr. Elena Martinez, head of xenobiology for this project. Kyrine's eyes fixed on her with an intensity that made her feel like she was being scanned at the molecular level. Instead of taking her hand, they touched their own chest and inclined their head, a gesture Elena immediately mimicked. Dr. Martinez. The way Kyrin pronounced her name made it sound like music. We have much to discuss. Our primary interest in Earth stems from a discovery that has shocked our scientific community, a potential genetic compatibility between our species that defies all known laws of convergent evolution. Elena's scientific mind kicked into overdrive, temporarily overwhelming her awe. Genetic compatibility? That should be impossible. The chances of two species from different solar systems sharing enough genetic markers for any kind of compatibility are astronomical, Kyrin finished. Yet here we are. Perhaps the universe has a sense of humor after all. Over the next several hours, Elena found herself in the most fascinating scientific discussion of her life. The Verlaxians had discovered Earth decades ago but had waited to make contact until they could confirm their suspicions about genetic compatibility. Their own species was facing a crisis, a degradation in their genetic diversity that threatened their long-term survival. Earth's genetic diversity, particularly human DNA, might hold the key to their salvation. We propose a joint research initiative, Kyrin explained as they showed Elena holographic models of Verlaxian DNA. Your species' remarkable genetic adaptability, combined with our advanced understanding of genetic engineering, could benefit both our peoples. Elena watched the double helix-like structure rotate in the air before her, noting the bizarre similarities to human DNA. This could revolutionize our understanding of life itself, she breathed. Indeed. Kyrin's violet eyes met hers again, and she felt that same electric tingle down her spine. Though I must warn you, Dr. Martinez. This project will challenge everything you think you know about biology, evolution, and perhaps even the nature of life itself. As the sun set over the desert facility, Elena found herself unable to look away from the elegant alien being who had literally dropped from the sky into her life. She told herself her racing pulse was from scientific excitement, not the way Kyrin's crystalline crown caught the dying sunlight, or how their eyes seemed to see straight through to her soul. When do we begin? She asked, already knowing this project would change her life forever. Kyrin's expression shifted in a way she couldn't quite interpret. We already have, Dr. Martinez. We already have. As Elena lay in her bed that night, sleep eluded her. Her mind raced with the implications of the day's events, the incredible scientific possibilities ahead, and most disturbingly, the way her heart had skipped a beat every time Kyrin had said her name. She was a scientist, trained to maintain professional distance and objectivity. Yet something about the Verlaxian ambassador had gotten under her skin in a way she couldn't explain. Little did she know, this was only the beginning of the most impossible relationship in human history. Impossible. Elena whispered the word for perhaps the 100th time that week as she stared at the holographic display. The three-dimensional model of intertwined human and Verlaxian DNA sequences rotated slowly before her, defying everything she thought she knew about biology. You keep using that word, Kyrin observed from across the lab, their crystalline crown catching the blue light from the hologram. Yet the evidence suggests otherwise. 3 months had passed since first contact, and Elena's world had shrunk to this state-of-the-art laboratory built specifically for their joint research. The facility, hidden away in the Nevada desert, had become her second home. Or perhaps her first. She couldn't remember the last time she'd slept in her actual bed rather than the on-site quarters. But it doesn't make sense, Elena insisted, manipulating the hologram with practiced gestures. These binding sites, they're like perfectly shaped puzzle pieces. As if our DNA was designed to be compatible with yours. Kyrin moved closer, their presence causing the familiar flutter in Elena's chest that she'd been trying desperately to ignore. Perhaps, they said softly, that is exactly what we're meant to discover. The proximity alarm on Elena's tablet chirped, warning that they were standing too close according to protocol. She took a reluctant step back, maintaining the mandatory 2-meter distance that General Chen had insisted upon. The military remained nervous about prolonged physical proximity between humans and Verlaxians, despite all evidence suggesting they carried no pathogens dangerous to humans. Dr. Martinez. James burst into the lab, his face flushed with excitement. The results from the cellular fusion experiment, you need to see this. Elena hurried to the isolation chamber where they'd been attempting to merge human and Verlaxian stem cells. The microscope feed showed something unprecedented. The cells hadn't just survived contact, they were thriving, forming entirely new structures that shouldn't have been possible. The membrane proteins are perfectly aligned, James said, pointing to the display. It's like they're speaking the same language. More than that, Kyrine added, their violet eyes intense. They're singing the same song. Elena shot them a curious look. The Verlaxian had been making more such poetic observations lately, departing from their initially pure scientific discourse. She found it oddly endearing. Dr. Martinez. General Chen's voice cut through the moment like a knife. She stood in the doorway, her expression grim. We need to talk. Now. In the general's office, Elena found herself facing a wall of screens showing news feeds and social media. Anti-alien protests had broken out in major cities worldwide. Signs reading, "Keep Earth Human," and "No Alien DNA," filled the streets. The leak came from inside the facility, Chen said, her voice tight with anger. Someone released preliminary data about the genetic compatibility studies. The public is not reacting well to the idea of possible human-alien hybridization. Elena's heart sank. But that's not what we're studying. The compatibility research is about understanding fundamental biological principles and potentially developing new medical treatments. Try explaining that to the protesters. Chen clicked through more footage. The president is under pressure to shut down the project. Religious groups are calling it an abomination. And there are rumors that certain parties would rather see the facility destroyed than risk further research. That's insane. Elena protested. We're on the verge of revolutionary discoveries that could benefit both species. The medical applications alone could be weaponized, Chen cut in. Or at least, that's what the critics are claiming. I'm increasing security, but I need you to understand the gravity of the situation. One wrong move, one hint of inappropriate contact between species, and this all ends. Elena felt her face flush, wondering if the general somehow knew about the growing tension between her and Kyrine. I understand. Back in the lab, Elena found Kyrine examining the cellular fusion results with an uncharacteristically troubled expression. Your people fear us, they stated without looking up. Some do, Elena admitted. Fear of the unknown is deeply ingrained in human nature. Not unknown. Kyrine's voice carried an edge she'd never heard before. Fear of possibility. Fear of change. Fear of evolution itself. They turned to face her, their crystalline crown dimmed with emotion. My people fear as well, though they express it differently. The council demands results, yet they refuse to accept the most obvious path forward. Which is direct testing of genetic compatibility between our species. Elena's breath caught. You mean? Yes. Kyrine stepped closer, ignoring the proximity alarm's warning chirp. We can run simulations forever, Dr. Martinez, but at some point, we must acknowledge what the data is telling us. Our species are drawn together by more than chance. Kyrine. Elena's voice wavered. We can't. The protocols were written by those who fear what they don't understand. They were close enough now that Elena could see the subtle patterns shifting beneath their silvery skin. Tell me you haven't felt it too. This resonance between us. Before Elena could respond, the lab's main door slid open. James entered with a stack of data tablets, then froze at the sight of them standing so close. Sorry, he stammered. I'll come back later. Elena stepped back quickly, her heart pounding. No, stay. We were just discussing the cellular fusion results. But as she buried herself in work for the rest of the day, she couldn't forget the look in Kyrine's eyes or the truth in their words. Every cell in her body seemed to hum with awareness when they were near, as if responding to some frequency she couldn't consciously perceive. That night, reviewing the data alone in her quarters, Elena made a discovery that changed everything. Hidden in the complex dance of cellular fusion was a pattern she'd seen before, in the original signal that had led to first contact. The Verlaxians hadn't just been broadcasting a message, they'd been broadcasting their genetic code, reaching out across space to find their other half. Her hands shook as she sent a message to Kyrine's private channel, "Meet me in the lab. There's something you need to see." As she waited for their response, Elena knew she was about to break every protocol in the book. But some discoveries were worth any risk, and some connections transcended the boundaries of worlds. The proximity alarm on her tablet chirped one final warning before she turned it off completely. The lab was different at night. Emergency lighting cast everything in a soft blue glow, making the sophisticated equipment look almost otherworldly. Elena's footsteps echoed as she made her way to her workstation, her heart racing with equal parts excitement and apprehension. When Kyrine appeared, they seemed to materialize from the shadows themselves. Their crystalline crown glowed faintly in the darkness, creating haunting patterns on the walls. "You found something," they said. It wasn't a question. The signal. Elena pulled up the holographic display, hands trembling slightly. "Your first broadcast to Earth, it wasn't just a message, was it? It was a genetic beacon." Kyrine moved closer, their violet eyes reflecting the holographic light. "You understand now. Your people have been searching for genetic matches across the galaxy. That's why you waited so long to make contact, you needed to confirm the compatibility first." Elena's voice dropped to a whisper. "But why hide it? Why not tell us from the beginning?" "Because," Kyrine's response was cut short by a sudden explosion that rocked the facility. Red emergency lights flooded the lab as alarms blared. Through the reinforced windows, Elena saw flames erupting from the east wing where they kept their most sensitive equipment. The cellular fusion chamber. Elena gasped, already running toward the fire. "Elena, wait!" Kyrine called after her, but she was already racing down the corridor. The east wing was filling with smoke. Elena pulled her emergency respirator from her lab coat pocket as she ran. The cellular fusion chamber contained their most crucial experiments, months of irreplaceable research. More importantly, it contained living proof of compatibility between their species. She reached the security door and slammed her palm against the scanner. The door slid open with a hiss, releasing a wave of acrid smoke. Inside, she could see flames licking at the ceiling near the main power conduits. Elena fought her way to the central console, trying to initiate emergency containment protocols. The heat was intense, making it difficult to focus. She heard Kyrine's voice behind her, shouting something she couldn't make out over the roar of the fire. The console sparked dangerously as she worked. Just a few more seconds and she could save the core samples. Suddenly, strong arms wrapped around her waist, pulling her back. Kyrine's voice was urgent in her ear, "The containment field is failing. We must leave now." But the samples. The explosion threw them both backward. Elena felt Kyrine twist in mid-air, taking the brunt of the impact as they crashed through the laboratory doors. Then everything went black. She awoke in the medical bay, the harsh white lights making her head pound. General Chen stood at the foot of her bed, looking more worried than angry. "You're lucky to be alive," Chen said. "If the Verlaxian hadn't." She trailed off, glancing at something beyond Elena's field of vision. Elena turned her head carefully, ignoring the pain that shot down her neck. In the bed next to hers lay Kyrine, their silvery skin dulled to a matte gray. Their crystalline crown, usually luminescent with inner light, was dark and still. "No," Elena whispered, trying to sit up. "Are they stable, but unconscious?" a new voice said. Dr. Patel, the facility's chief medical officer, stepped into view. "Though we're somewhat out of our depth here. Verlaxian physiology is complex." "What happened?" Elena demanded, looking back at Chen. "Was it the protesters?" The general's expression hardened. "No. Initial investigation suggests deliberate sabotage. Someone inside the facility planted explosives in the power system." "The samples?" Elena already knew the answer from Chen's grim expression. "Everything in the East Wing was destroyed. All your research data, the cellular fusion experiments, gone." Elena closed her eyes, fighting back tears of frustration. Months of work, destroyed in moments. But more importantly, help me up. I need to examine Kyrine. "Dr. Martinez," Chen began, "you're in no condition." "Their biology is unlike anything we've seen," Elena interrupted. "I'm the most qualified person here to help them." She struggled to sit up. "And there's something else you need to know. About the real reason the Verlaxians came to Earth." Before she could continue, a commotion erupted in the hallway. James burst in, looking panicked. "General! We're receiving a transmission from the Verlaxian High Council. They're demanding Ambassador Kyrine's immediate return. They're threatening to withdraw all diplomatic relations with Earth." Elena's heart stopped. "No, they can't. They don't understand what we've discovered." A weak voice spoke from the other bed. "They understand, all too well." Everyone turned to see Kyrine struggling to sit up, their violet eyes dim but alert. Their next words changed everything. "My people are dying, Elena. Not just facing a crisis of genetic diversity, we are truly dying. Each generation, fewer of us can reproduce. Our scientists predicted total species extinction within 3 generations." Their voice grew stronger. "Then we found Earth. Found humans. Found you." "The compatibility tests," Elena whispered. "They weren't just about understanding the science, were they?" "No." Kyrine's crown flickered weakly. "They were about survival. About hope. About finding the one species in the galaxy whose genetic code could save us. But the Council, they fear what this means. They fear the change it would bring to our society. Some would rather see our species end than merge with another." General Chen stepped forward. "Are you saying that humans and Verlaxians could actually breed?" Kyrine finished. "Yes. More than that, we must, if my species is to survive. But there's something else." They locked eyes with Elena. "Something I haven't told anyone. The reason I was chosen for this mission." Elena felt a strange tingling sensation, like static electricity running through her body. "What reason?" "The genetic beacon we sent to Earth. I was the one who detected the response. Not from your technology, but from specific individuals. Humans whose genetic code sang back to ours across the void of space." Kyrine's voice softened. "You were the strongest signal, Elena. Your DNA calls to mine like a symphony." The medical bay fell silent except for the steady beep of monitoring equipment. Elena felt the weight of everyone's stares, but she could only focus on Kyrine's words, on the truth she'd felt in her cells from the first moment they'd met. "The explosion wasn't random," Kyrine continued. "There are those on both our worlds who would rather see us destroyed than united. The question now is, what are we prepared to risk for the truth?" Elena reached out, ignoring the proximity alerts, and took Kyrine's hand. Their skin was cool to the touch, but she felt that familiar resonance, stronger than ever. Everything, she said. We risk everything. General Chen cleared her throat. Dr. Martinez, I need you to understand the gravity. She was interrupted by another alarm. James, still at the door, checked his tablet and went pale. Multiple incoming aircraft, no identification codes. Military response teams are scrambling, but they're coming for the research, Elena realized. For us. As if in response, the facility's lights flickered ominously. In the distance, they heard the first explosions begin. The choice between worlds was about to be made for them all. Red emergency lights pulsed through the medical bay as the facility's security systems engaged. The distant sound of explosions grew closer. We need to move, now. General Chen barked into her comm unit. Execute Protocol Omega. Seal all research levels and prepare for facility evacuation. Elena helped Kyrin to their feet, supporting their still weakened form. The backup drives, she said urgently. There's still a copy of our research in the secure server room. Forget the research, Chen ordered. We need to get you both to the underground bunker. You don't understand, Kyrin's voice was stronger now, their crown beginning to regain its glow. That data isn't just research, it's a roadmap for both our species' survival. If it falls into the wrong hands. Another explosion rocked the facility, closer this time. The lights flickered ominously. Dr. Martinez. James rushed back in, his tablet displaying security feeds. They're not just military. I'm seeing civilian vehicles too, those anti-alien protest groups. They're armed, and they're broadcasting some kind of manifesto about preserving human purity. Elena's mind raced. They needed a plan, fast. James, help General Chen coordinate the evacuation. Kyrin and I will get to the server room. That's not protocol, Chen began. Protocol died with that explosion in the East Wing, Elena cut her off. If we lose this research, we lose everything. Before anyone could argue further, the facility's main power grid failed. Emergency generators hummed to life, but Elena knew they were running out of time. They're ships, she said suddenly, turning to Kyrin. Can you contact the Verlaxian vessel in orbit? The Council has ordered them not to respond to any Earth communications, Kyrin replied. But I might be able to reach my personal transport in the hangar. If it wasn't damaged in the attack. General Chen's face hardened with understanding. You're planning to leave Earth. Not leave, Elena corrected. Protect. The research needs to be preserved somewhere safe until both our worlds are ready for the truth. She met Chen's gaze. You know I'm right. After a long moment, Chen nodded. James, with me. We'll create a diversion at the main entrance. She fixed Elena with a stern look. You have 15 minutes before I'm required by protocol to shoot down any unauthorized launches. They split up, Elena and Kyrin moving as quickly as they could through the darkened corridors toward the server room. Every shadow held potential threats, they had no way of knowing how many infiltrators had already breached the facility. Elena, Kyrin spoke softly as they moved, there's something else you need to know. About the genetic beacon. Now? We're kind of in the middle of something. It's important. Kyrin's violet eyes seemed to glow in the dim light. The resonance between compatible pairs, it's not just biological. Once fully awakened, it creates a permanent psychic bond. Our minds would be linked forever. Elena almost stumbled. You mean? If we proceed with what the research suggests is possible, there's no going back. We would be the first of our kind, a bridge between worlds in every sense. They reached the server room door. Elena's hands shook slightly as she entered her access code. Why didn't you tell me this before? Because I needed you to trust your own feelings first, not just the biology. Kyrine's crown pulsed with emotion. And because my people consider it a sacred thing, not to be spoken of until the moment of choice. The server room door slid open with a hydraulic hiss. Inside, banks of quantum computers hummed quietly, storing the sum of their groundbreaking research. Elena quickly began the data transfer process while Kyrine stood guard. You know what's fascinating? Elena said as she worked, trying to keep her hands steady. Humans have legends about soulmates, perfect pairs destined to find each other. We've written stories about it for thousands of years. She glanced at Kyrine. Maybe we remembered something our ancestors knew, something written in our very DNA. A warning klaxon blared through the facility. 5 minutes until facility lockdown, an automated voice announced. Elena cursed, willing the transfer to move faster. 87%. 88%. 89%. Footsteps echoed in the corridor outside. Multiple sets, moving quickly. Elena. Kyrine's voice was urgent. Whatever happens next, know that. The door exploded inward in a shower of sparks and twisted metal. Through the smoke, Elena saw figures in tactical gear, weapons raised. But these weren't military, their patches showed a burning Earth symbol, the mark of the radical anti-alien group, Earth Pure. Step away from the computers, the leader ordered. This abomination ends now. Elena's hand hovered over the transfer console. 95% complete. Just a few more seconds. You don't understand what you're destroying, she said, trying to buy time. This research could save millions of lives. By corrupting humanity's genetic legacy? By breeding aliens into our species? The leader's voice dripped with disgust. We know all about your compatibility studies. Did you think we wouldn't have supporters inside the facility? 99% complete. Elena's fingers tensed over the console. Now, Dr. Martinez. Kyrine's voice rang out as their crown suddenly flared with blinding light. The attackers staggered back, shielding their eyes. Elena slammed her hand down on the console, confirming the transfer and initiating the emergency purge sequence. All around them, the servers began to overheat, destroying any trace of the original data. The leader of the Earth Pure group recovered first, raising his weapon. No. Several things happened at once. The facility's lockdown protocol engaged, blast doors slamming shut throughout the complex. Kyrine lunged forward, their weakened body moving with unexpected speed. Elena felt herself being pushed aside as the weapon discharged. The world seemed to move in slow motion. Elena saw Kyrine's crystalline crown shatter, fragments catching the emergency lights like falling stars. She felt a searing pain in her chest that wasn't her own, a psychic echo of Kyrine's wound. Then the backup generators failed, plunging everything into darkness. In the chaos that followed, Elena was aware of only two things: the small data crystal clutched in her hand, containing everything they discovered about human Verlaxian compatibility, and the faint glow of Kyrine's skin growing dimmer by the second. Somewhere above, through layers of steel and concrete, she heard the distinctive sound of Verlaxian ships entering the atmosphere. The High Council had apparently decided to take matters into their own hands. As consciousness faded, Elena realized that the choice she'd feared making had become clear. The price of truth was everything they had, but the cost of silence would be everything they could become. Her last thought before the darkness took her was a quote from her graduate thesis: "Evolution doesn't ask permission to change the world. It simply presents the evidence and lets survival make its case." She and Kyrine had their evidence. Now they just had to survive to present it. Elena woke to the sound of singing. At first, she thought she was dreaming. The melody was unlike anything she'd ever heard, crystalline tones that seemed to resonate with her very cells. As consciousness returned fully, she realized she was in a medical chamber unlike any she'd seen before. The walls shimmered with an opalescent light, and the air itself seemed to pulse with energy. "You're aboard the Verlaxian flagship," a familiar voice said. James sat beside her bed, looking both exhausted and relieved. "They evacuated everyone after the attack. It's been an interesting week." "Kewarain?" Elena tried to sit up, fighting against the weakness in her limbs. "Alive. Recovering." James helped her adjust her position. "Their medical technology is incredible. They were able to repair most of the damage from the shooting, though the crown." He trailed off. Elena touched her chest where she'd felt Kyrain's wound. "The psychic link. It's real, isn't it?" "Very." James smiled slightly. "You kept calling out to each other while unconscious. The Verlaxian doctors said they'd never seen anything like it. The resonance between you is apparently off their charts." "The data crystal?" "Safe. General Chen has it under military protection." "But Elena, things have changed while you were out. The whole world knows now. About everything." He activated a holographic display, showing news feeds from Earth. The headline scrolled past: "Alien-human compatibility confirmed, Verlaxian crisis revealed, genetic bridge between stars?" "The attack on the facility forced everything into the open," James explained. "When the Verlaxian ships arrived to evacuate us, they couldn't keep it secret anymore. The High Council was forced to make a public statement about their species' situation." "How bad is the reaction?" "Mixed. There are still protesters, still people claiming it's all a conspiracy. But there's hope too. Scientists worldwide are calling for cooperation. Religious leaders are debating the theological implications. And people are fascinated by you and Kyrain." Elena felt her face flush. "What do you mean?" "You're all over the news, the scientist and the alien who risked everything to prove our species could have a future together. It's quite romantic, actually." Before Elena could respond, the chamber's door dissolved, revealing a Verlaxian medical officer. "Dr. Martinez," they said formally, "the council requests your presence. Ambassador Kyrain is waiting." The walk to the council chamber was surreal. The Verlaxian ship's corridors seemed to form around them as they walked, architecture responding to their presence. Through vast windows, Elena could see Earth below, a blue jewel in the void. The council chamber took her breath away. Dozens of Verlaxians sat in a spiral arrangement, their crystalline crowns creating a symphony of light. At the center stood Kyrain, their own crown now a delicate lattice of newly grown crystals. Dr. Elena Martinez, the council leader, spoke, their voice carrying that same musical quality she'd first heard in Kyrain's speech. "You stand at the center of a moment that will reshape two worlds." Elena straightened her spine. "With respect, our worlds are already reshaping themselves. We're just finally admitting it." "Indeed." The leader's crown flickered with what might have been amusement. "We have reviewed the research data. Our scientists confirm what you and Kyrain discovered. The compatibility between our species is no accident. We've suspected for centuries," another council member added, "that our ancestors might have visited Earth in its distant past. Perhaps they did more than visit. The genetic markers are clear," Elena said. "Our species have been on converging evolutionary paths for millions of years. The only question is whether it was by design or cosmic chance. The greater question," Kyrain spoke for the first time, moving to stand beside her, "is what we do with this knowledge." Elena felt the resonance between them surge, stronger than ever. Through their growing psychic link, she sensed Kyrain's mixture of hope and apprehension. "The council has reached a decision," the leader announced. "We will proceed with the genetic integration program, carefully, ethically, and with full transparency to both worlds. But first, They focused their gaze on Elena and Kyrin. We must prove it's possible. Elena's heart raced. You mean? You two represent the strongest genetic compatibility we've ever measured, the leader continued. Your resonance is unprecedented. If successful integration is possible, it will be through pairs like you. There are others? Elena asked. 17 potential pairs identified so far, Kyrin answered. But we are the first to achieve active psychic resonance. The leader rose. Dr. Martinez, we offer you a choice. You can return to Earth as a scientific advisor to the integration program, or we can be the bridge, Elena finished. She looked at Kyrin, whose violet eyes held questions and answers both. Through their strengthening bond, she felt the truth of what this would mean. Their minds would merge completely. Their genetic codes would combine in ways never before seen. They would be the first of something entirely new, not quite human, not quite Verlaxian, but a glimpse of what both species could become. The choice should have been difficult. It should have required careful consideration of the scientific, political, and personal implications. But as Elena stood there, feeling the resonance between them singing in her cells, she knew there was only one answer. When do we begin? The ceremony took place a month later, witnessed by representatives from both worlds. As Elena and Kyrin's minds fully merged, their genetic codes beginning the dance of combination, the crystalline singing she'd heard upon waking in the medical chamber returned. But this time, it wasn't just the Verlaxians. Human voices joined in, creating a harmony that had never been heard before in the history of either species. Later, standing at the same window where she'd viewed Earth from space, Elena felt Kyrin's presence in her mind, a constant symphony of shared thoughts and emotions. Do you regret anything? Kyrin asked, though they could feel the answer through their bond. Only that we waited so long to admit what we knew from the start. Elena turned to face them, seeing her own reflection in their violet eyes. You know what's funny? Humans have a saying, written in the stars. And now we are written in each other's DNA, Kyrin finished, their new crown glowing with shared joy. Below them, Earth continued its eternal dance around the sun. Above, the vast galaxy sparkled with possibility. And between them, a bridge of stars had finally been built, one genetic sequence at a time. In the end, it wasn't just about saving a species or making history. It was about proving that love, like life itself, finds a way to evolve beyond any boundary, even the space between stars.